First, we have to stop the killings. Putin has many demands, but we do not know all of them. And if there are really as many as we heard, then it will take time to go through them all. It's impossible to do this under the pressure of weapons. So it's necessary to cease fire and work quickly on a final deal. We'll talk about it in Washington. Putin does not want to stop the killing, but he must do it. Second, we need real negotiations, which means they can start where the front line is now. The contact line is the best line for talking, and Europeans support this. And we thank everyone. Russia is still unsuccessful in Donetsk region. Putin has been unable to take it for 12 years. And the constitution of Ukraine makes it impossible to give up territory or trade land. Since the territorial issue is so important, it should be discussed only by the leaders of Ukraine and Russia at the Trilateral, Ukraine, United States, Russia. So far, Russia gives no sign that Trilateral will happen, and if Russia refuses, then new sanctions must follow.
This is my video update on this Sunday afternoon, August the 17th. Coming to you from Limassol, Cyprus. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with the Russian president briefing government officials on the talks in Alaska with the Trump administration and President Putin. He said that the summit in Alaska brings us closer to a Ukraine resolution. He also told those in attendance that more than just Ukraine was discussed at these meetings. They discussed a wide array of topics and issues. And he also told those in attendance that the resolution to Project Ukraine must be based on June 2024 root causes. This is what Putin said. The Russian delegation had the opportunity to convey our position once again, calmly and in detail, as well as to discuss the genesis, the causes of the Ukraine crisis. Precisely the elimination of these root causes should underlie the conflict resolution, Putin emphasized, adding that Moscow shares the Trump administration's desire to put an end to the hostilities as soon as possible, and ideally by peaceful means. Root causes, June 2024. That is what the resolution to the conflict in Ukraine will be based on. And going by Putin's statement, once again, it shows that Putin and Russia, they conceded nothing. They made no concessions. The resolution must be based on June 2024 Istanbul Plus. I like it when Putin says that the Russian delegation had the opportunity to convey our position once again, calmly and in detail, as well as to discuss the genesis, the causes of the Ukraine crisis. A history lesson from Putin to Trump. That must have been interesting to watch. Putin and his history lessons with Trump sitting across the table listening to Putin go over the genesis, the history of the conflict in Ukraine, or what brought us to the conflict in Ukraine. So that's the statement from the Russian president. Russia prefers to solve this diplomatically. Of course, if this can't be solved diplomatically, then it will be solved militarily. But whatever happens, it's going to be based on June 2024 terms. At least while those terms are still on the table. So we have Zelensky traveling to the United States tomorrow. Zelensky is coming to America. That's right. And he's bringing with him quite an entourage. He was invited. The reports say that the Trump White House invited Zelensky, officially invited Zelensky, to come to D.C. and to meet with Trump. There are reports which claim that Zelensky's entourage, which is going to be a bunch of European leaders, that they were not officially invited, but the Trump White House is okay with Zelensky bringing them along. That's pretty much what's going on here. And the reason that these people are going to be accompanying Zelensky to the United States is because they want to, one, try and influence Trump, to break off the negotiations with Russia and to stay committed to the conflict in Ukraine. And number two is they want to prevent a blow up along the lines of what happened last time Zelensky was in the White House. So that's why these European leaders are going to be traveling with Zelensky to the United States. And so there are also reports which say that the Trump White House, what they're trying to do, their strategy is to try and get Zelensky to agree to Istanbul Plus, to root causes, because it does look like the Trump White House, at least for the moment, for the time being. Of course, Trump can always flip-flop, but for the time being, it looks like the Trump administration is also on board with June 2024 Istanbul Plus. He's even posted about it on Truth Social. He said that a ceasefire is off the table and we need to go for a fast peace, and that peace is going to be based on Istanbul Plus. But the strategy that the Trump White House is going for is to get Zelensky to agree to Istanbul Plus, and if he agrees to those terms, then what the Trump White House wants to do is to put together a trilateral meeting between Zelensky, Putin, and Trump. And they want to do this as quickly as possible. They've even picked out a date, a target date for August the 22nd. So if Zelensky agrees to the Istanbul Plus terms, then August 22nd, according to the United States, you could be seeing a trilateral meeting between all three leaders. The Russians, on their side of things, they're saying that they haven't heard anything about a trilateral meeting. That wasn't discussed in Alaska. That's what they're saying. A trilateral meeting was not a topic that we discussed in detail. And so they have not agreed to any such thing. But I would take a guess and say that if, and this is a big if, because so far Zelensky has said that he will not agree to June 2024 terms, but if he does end up agreeing to June 2024 terms, then you could see a trilateral meeting, because what would effectively be taking place is Ukraine's capitulation. The collective West Ukraine capitulation is what you would be seeing taking place on August 22nd, if that is indeed going to be the date for a future trilateral meeting. But so far, the Russian side is saying officially, we did not sign up for such a thing, and we don't know about such a thing taking place. But anyway, that's the Trump White House strategy. Zelensky has said he is not going to accept the terms, or the reported terms that were discussed in Alaska, because we still don't know exactly the details of everything that was discussed, but we kind of have an outline of what was discussed. And going off of what Trump has posted on Truth Social, what he said, and what Putin is saying, the general outline is indeed June 2024 terms. The Europeans are siding with Zelensky, of course, and they're saying they are not going to agree to such terms. And it's going to be the Europeans that will be holding Zelensky's hand in DC. And according to Politico, we're talking about some heavy hitters who will be holding Zelensky's hand in the United States. Who are these heavy hitters? Let's read off who has been confirmed to be holding Zelensky's hand as he travels to the United States. President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, Chancellor of Germany, Friedrich BlackRock Merz, Prime Minister of Italy, Georgia, the globalist, Meloni, President of Finland, and Trump's golfing buddy, Alexander Stubb, President of France, Emmanuel Flip-Flopper Macron, and the CEO of NATO, Mark Rutte. They are bringing the A-team, the European A-team, to the United States in order to hold Zelensky's hand. He's like a little kid, isn't he? He is like a little child. Well, he's a little child that's going to see daddy, right? He's going to see daddy, and he needs mommy to hold his hand. Oh my God. He's taking chaperones with him. He needs chaperones with him to go to the United States to meet with Trump. And they are bringing the heavy hitters who were not invited to Alaska, of course. These are the European heavy hitters, the European A-team that was sidelined from the talks in Alaska, but they're going to be accompanying Zelensky to the United States. And Alexander Stubb of Finland, remember the Wall Street Journal article that I talked about in my video update a couple of days ago, which claims that Alexander Stubb has some sort of a magical influence, a magical power influence over Trump because they're golfing buddies, and that Trump, according to the Wall Street Journal, calls Alexander Stubb and just talks about golfing stuff, right, with Alexander Stubb. And then Alexander Stubb, he uses this golfing bond that he has with Trump in order to push the collective West NATO EU agenda when it comes to Project Ukraine. So he's going to be there, no doubt, to try and influence Trump to break off the negotiations, the rapprochement with Russia. Emmanuel Flip-Flopper Macron. Macron has some sort of magical power over Trump. He has some sort of weird influence over Trump. Trump likes Macron. I have not been able to understand why Trump has this affection for Macron, but there it is. Bringing Ursula von der Leyen to this meeting after what Trump did to her in Scotland. Not the best move, Zelensky. Not the best move at all. Trump destroyed her in Scotland. Ursula posted on X, "This afternoon, I will welcome Zelensky in Brussels. Together, we will participate in the Coalition of the Willing VTC. At the request of President Zelensky, I will join the meeting with President Trump and other European leaders in the White House tomorrow." So today we're going to have a Coalition of the Willing VTC, a virtual teleconference. Is that what a VTC is? It sounds very serious. Ursula von der Leyen is doing some very complicated work, very complicated diplomacy, putting together a Coalition of the Willing VTC. They're going to get on Zoom. They're going to get on Zoom and talk about what a baddie Putin is. That's what they're going to do. Oh, man. So, yeah, those are the people going to the United States. Mark Rutte, because they need Mark Rutte in D.C. to kiss up to Trump, to kiss up to daddy. Right? No one kisses up to Trump better than Mark Rutte. No one kisses up to Trump better than Mark Rutte. Friedrich Merz, I don't know why they're bringing him. BlackRock, maybe it's the BlackRock connection. And Georgia Meloni is going to the United States, not to go to this meeting. She's going to the United States to look for Elon Musk. That's why she's going. She doesn't care about this meeting. Georgia Meloni's going to be at this meeting, looking at her watch, going, "When is this thing over? So I can plan a dinner date with Elon Musk." That's what Georgia Meloni is going for. So there are reports which claim, and these are just rumors, that the White House has told Zelensky to wear a suit. That's right. The White House has informed the Ukrainian delegation that Zelensky must wear a suit or there will be no meeting. Bravo, White House. It's a formal meeting, and the presidency of the U.S. is an institution that demands the highest level of formality. Poor Zelensky's got to find a suit now. Hey, Podolyak, I forgot how to tie a necktie. Can you do it for me, Podolyak? You're such a good friend. Yes, Mr. President. I'll tie the knot. Oh, man. Yeah, so Zelensky might be suiting it up. That's when you know it's over. You know it's over when Zelensky is suiting it up. So there's a freak out in the collective West over the Alaska summit. The European leaders, they issued a joint statement saying that they support Trump, but they don't support the negotiations. And all of them signed on to this joint statement. Ursula and Meloni and Macron and Merz and Stammer, all of the EU leaders signed up to this joint statement. Orban did not sign up to this statement, nor did Fico. Fico put out a statement of his own, and he said that the negotiations between the United States and Russia are necessary to bring a resolution to the conflict in Ukraine. And Fico also said that Ukraine's interests need to be taken into consideration, the EU security interests, Europe's security interests, Ukraine's security interests. But he also said that Russia's security interests need to be taken into consideration as the United States and Russia negotiate for a stable and secure Europe. That is what Fico said. All the other European leaders outside of Orban and Fico, they signed up to this joint statement where they praised Trump for his initiative to bring a resolution to the conflict in Ukraine, but they disapprove of him talking to Russia and to Putin. Stunning and brave, stunning and brave, because she is absolutely stunning and absolutely brave. EU Foreign Minister Kaja Kallas, she is warning Trump. She is warning Trump after the Alaska meeting ended. When it came to an end, Kaja Kallas issued a statement warning Trump to not trust Putin. She said that Putin doesn't want peace, according to Kaja Kallas. The Kremlin is dragging out talks and refusing to make any concessions, Brussels' most senior envoy said in an apparent break from colleagues. Moscow won't end the war until it realizes it can't continue, so Europe will continue to back Ukraine, including by working on a 19th Russia sanctions package. Kallas went on, blasting Putin's claim that Kiev was responsible for the root causes of the war. The real root cause of the war is Russia's imperialist foreign policy, not an imaginary imbalance in the European security architecture, she stated. Europeans talking about imperialism. Okay, anyway, that is what Kallas is warning Trump. And what's her solution to all of this? A 19 sanctions package, of course, because that's her solution to everything. Her solution to everything is a sanctions package. That's how Kaja Kallas solves the geopolitical problems around the world, which are always blamed on Russia, and the solution is always more sanctions against Russia. So anyway, that is what she said. And the foreign minister of Poland, Radoslaw Sikorski, a man who was at the Maidan in 2014, a neocon through and through, Mr. Sikorsky, a man who posted on X 5 minutes after Nord Stream was blown up. Thank you, USA. That is what Sikorsky posted on X right after the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage. He is saying that we will tell Zelensky that we will do what we have done so far: supply weapons, support, and ensure the path to EU membership. So Sikorsky is telling Ukraine that the European Union will provide weapons that it does not have. It will help Ukraine to continue to, it will support Ukraine to continue to fight a war that it has already lost. And Ukraine's path into the European Union, which is just code for Ukraine's path into NATO, which the Russians said will never happen. They will never allow Ukraine into NATO, and they should not allow Ukraine into the European Union. Anyway, that's Sikorsky. That is what he said with regards to the Alaska meeting. Reuters put out an article where it claims it has been given an outline for the deal that was presented by Russia to the United States in Alaska. And Reuters sources for this outline of a deal are those anonymous people familiar with the matter. Those anonymous people familiar with the matter. Outline emerges of Putin's offer to end his war in Ukraine. Interesting title, huh? His war in Ukraine. The two sources who requested anonymity to discuss sensitive matters said their knowledge of Putin's proposals was mostly based on discussions between leaders in Europe, the United States, and Ukraine, and noted it was not complete. So it was not complete. These sources are saying we don't have a complete picture of what was discussed in Alaska. Our sources for this proposal that Russia presented to the United States are people in Europe, Ukraine, and the United States who are discussing the negotiations in Alaska. That's the source that Reuters is going with, and they claim that this is the outline of what Putin presented to the United States. Real good reporting, Reuters. Real rock solid sources that you have there. So the Reuters article goes through the outline, the framework that allegedly Russia presented to the United States. Reading the Reuters article, it sounds more like this is what the United States presented to Russia rather than what Russia presented to the United States. But it goes through the land swap. It claims that Russia told Trump that if Ukraine leaves Donetsk and Lugansk, then their forces will leave Sumy and Kharkov. It also says that they will agree to some sort of a temporary ceasefire in Kherson and Zaporozhye on the current contact line. It talks about sanctions relief and security guarantees, that the Russians are open to some sort of security guarantees and stuff like that. It's nothing that we haven't seen in the media so far. I mean, Reuters is just going off over the speculation that we've seen from the media over the past couple of days of what could be in some sort of an agreement with regards to Project Ukraine. And no NATO, of course, and no NATO. So the Wall Street Journal, they are reporting that security guarantees are on the table. That Trump mentioned this to Putin, and Putin was okay with security guarantees, including U.S. and European forces in Ukraine, which is a non-starter if you've listened to what the Russians have been saying over the past couple of years. The Wall Street Journal reports Trump told Europeans he's open to U.S. security guarantees in Ukraine, and that Putin had accepted that peace would need to include Western troops there. No freaking chance. The Russians have said 1,000 times, there will be no NATO collective West troops in Ukraine. Period. Full stop. So I don't know where the Wall Street Journal is coming up with this information, but no, no, I can't see Russia or Putin accepting this. Now, in the Istanbul agreements in 2022, in those agreements that Boris Johnson sabotaged, there were security guarantees for Ukraine. And I remember those security guarantees included Russia being a guarantor. I believe it floated out the possibility of China and another BRICS country. I seem to remember Turkey being mentioned. I remember India being floated out there. And I remember the U.S. I remember there was talks about the U.S. being one of the guarantors. That was in 2022, but that agreement got sabotaged by Boris Johnson. But you know what they're latching onto? All of these sources and the speculation and the reporting that is coming from the collective West about security guarantees. They're latching on to Putin's statement in Alaska that he made, where he said that Russia is of course open to discussing some sort of a security guarantee for Ukraine, provided that Russia's interests and security is taken into consideration. In other words, if we get to Istanbul Plus and we get to June 2024 root causes, then of course, if we agree to that, then of course we can put together some sort of a security guarantee for Ukraine, which will without a doubt include Russia and China and another BRICS or Russia-friendly country. It should not be Turkey, because Turkey has been on the side of the collective West. It's in NATO, and it's been on the side of Ukraine throughout this entire war. But a security guarantee will include, if we get to that point, will include Russia, I imagine China, maybe India, possibly. If there's any country in the collective West that could be a guarantor, allowed to be a guarantor, it would be the United States and no other country. I can't see any other country being allowed to be a guarantor. And my guess would be that the United States would be allowed to be a guarantor if the United States commits to no NATO for Ukraine ever. Then the United States might be allowed to be a guarantor. And of course, all of this is based on the fact that the Ukraine military will be completely disarmed, and what Ukraine will have is pretty much just a National Guard defensive force, defensive National Guard capability. That would be it. No weapons, no missiles, no big military, none of that stuff. So anyway, this is all just speculation, but and then we haven't even gotten to that point where we should even be discussing security guarantees. But the mainstream media in the West is discussing security guarantees. Axios also said that Putin told Trump that he is ready to discuss security guarantees for Ukraine, but named China as one of the possible guarantors. The collective West, they want to push this security guarantee narrative, and the Europeans are really keen on pushing the security guarantee narrative, which will include the United States and European countries, Western troops in Ukraine, because for them this is a way to keep the United States committed to Project Ukraine, which means the United States is committed to Europe, bogged down in Europe, and it's a trick. It's a way to trick Russia so that Ukraine eventually is put into NATO through these security guarantees through Western troops. Security guarantees with Western troops in Ukraine, that's kind of a backdoor for Ukraine to get into NATO. That's why they're pushing this narrative about Putin agreeing to security guarantees and telling Trump that he's okay with Western troops in Ukraine. Putin would never say that he's okay with Western troops in Ukraine. No freaking chance. Russia, China, India, I can see Russia saying, yeah, we'll agree to Russia, China, India as guarantor powers in Ukraine. Absolutely. That I can see. Anyway, let's talk about Serbia and protests in Serbia. I believe we're on the fourth day of protests in Serbia, in Belgrade, and in Novi Sad. And these protests are pretty violent. At least the videos and the images that I'm seeing are pretty violent protests that are taking place in Serbia. And all of this is connected to Vucic and the protests that took place about a month ago. Those protests that took place a month ago, and then the protests that took place 3 months ago and 6 months ago. And these protests, what started off as very peaceful, it looks like from the images that we're getting that it's turning very violent now. So you got to keep an eye on what is happening in Serbia with these protests, because I do believe we're now in our fourth day, and the police are clashing quite a bit with the protesters in Belgrade and in Novi Sad. I'm not sure if there's any protests happening in any other cities or towns, but those are the two main areas, at least from my understanding of things, where the protests are taking place in Serbia. So Melania Trump sent a letter to Putin, and this has been released. This letter has been published. It's been published on purpose, obviously, because we're seeing a lot of media spin now, and no doubt this is about pressuring Russia to agree to terms outside of June 2024, and that's why you're seeing this letter being released to the public. It puts pressure on Russia, and it also paints Russia in a bad light. But it's a letter from Melania where she is urging Putin to agree to a peace deal with her husband, with President Trump, in order to protect innocent children, which I agree with, and everyone obviously agrees with protecting children, protecting civilians who are caught up in a war. Absolutely. That's why we need to get to a peace deal. That's why we need to get to an agreement to stop the fighting in Ukraine. A lasting, permanent agreement to end the conflict in Ukraine, because no one wants to see civilians, and especially children, suffering. But what is being pointed out with this letter from Melania is the fact that she hasn't sent a similar letter to Netanyahu. And that is being pointed out in the replies on X to her letter that has been published. And everyone in the replies and the comments on X is pretty much saying the same thing. Where is the letter to Netanyahu, Melania? What about Gaza? What about the children in Gaza? Melania Trump's letter to Putin: every child holds the same quiet dreams in their heart, whether they are born by chance in a rural backwater of the country or in the magnificent city center. By protecting the innocence of these children, you do more than serve Russia, you serve humanity itself. Such a bold idea transcends all human divisions, and you, Mr. Putin, are capable of realizing this vision with a single stroke of the pen today. It's time. So everyone is in agreement with the message in this letter, the sentiment, the message in this letter. Absolutely, we want peace. We want the lives of innocent people, civilians, especially children, to be spared, to be saved. Everyone agrees with what Melania is saying, the message of this letter. What a lot of people do not agree with, and what they're taking issue with, is the hypocrisy, because there is a hypocrisy here. And the fact that this is addressed to Putin, perhaps this should also be addressed to her husband, President Trump, because the United States is also a party in this conflict. And the manipulative undertones of this message, the political manipulative undertones of this message, because the reason that this message was written by the First Lady and the reason it's been now published is because there is a political, geopolitical angle to this letter. But yeah, the message, we're all on board with the message. Absolutely, Melania. And it doesn't only hold for Ukraine and for Russia. It holds true for Gaza, for the Middle East, for wherever there is a conflict, wherever there is conflict and innocents are suffering and children are suffering. Yes, so the conflicts have to come to an end for the sake of the children and civilians who are caught up in areas of war. Anyway, that's the news. Quite a heavy topic there, but it has to be discussed because a lot of people are talking about this letter from Melania. Let's now shift gears and do a clown world. So the Daily Mail in the UK, they are saying that when Putin met with Trump, he was wearing shoes with lifts so he could appear taller. Okay. And according to the Daily Mail, he was also wearing an exoskeleton, or there are rumors that Putin was wearing an exoskeleton. Moment Putin's legs twitch suspiciously in Trump's farewell as Russian dictator dons platforms to overcome Napoleon complex. Amid rumors, he wore exoskeleton. So they think this makes Putin look bad or look weak, right? His Napoleon complex, they say. Napoleon complex. One of the most powerful people in the world, right? He has a complex. Anyway, yeah, they think this makes Putin look weak, or this humiliates or embarrasses Putin. The fact that he might be wearing an exoskeleton, I think it makes him look freaking cool, man. Dude, Putin has an exoskeleton? Really? That's awesome. That is freaking awesome. Oh my God. Podolyak, how can I get one of these exoskeletons before I meet Mr. Trump? I also have Napoleon complex. I need exoskeleton. Green Goblin, man. What's the Green Goblin without an exoskeleton? Oh my God, what a fail from the Daily Mail. What a freaking fail. So Ukraine media is saying that it wasn't even Putin in Alaska. It was his clone, of which he has like 10 different clones. But his clone went to Alaska. And that's not even the clown world of all of this. The clown world is that, and this is absolutely ridiculous. But anyway, this is Ukraine media. The clown world in all of this is that the Ukraine special services, they were ready to eliminate Putin in Alaska. So they had Putin in sight. They were ready to eliminate him in Alaska. This is not a joke. Until they realized that it was Putin's clone. And so they decided not to take the shot. Yep, that's what they're saying in the media in Ukraine. They had him in their sights. They were ready to eliminate the Russian president. And then they realized, oh my God, don't take the shot. Don't take the shot. Why? What's going on? That's not Putin. That's his clone. No, okay. And then they say that they let the meeting go on because it was his clone. So they said, let the meeting just continue. Clown world, everybody. Clown world. And finally, Ben Shapiro. He was very upset with the hypocrisy of the attire of the Russian foreign minister and how the Trump White House said nothing about Lavrov wearing a CCCP sweatshirt, which is the USSR, and Shapiro compared Lavrov wearing a CCCP sweatshirt to Zelensky at the White House wearing his green getup, and how the Trump administration was very angry with Zelensky when he was in the White House wearing his green getup, but they had, according to Shapiro, they had no problem with Lavrov wearing a USSR CCCP sweatshirt. And when Shapiro comments on stuff like that, you know he's right, and you know he's super intelligent, and he's absolutely correct when he comments on these issues because he talks really fast, right? That's how you know that he's very intelligent and that he knows what he's saying, because he is a fast talker, and fast talkers are intelligent. That's a given. Oh man, he's not the best geopolitical analyst, Ben Shapiro, because if he was a good analyst, even a mediocre analyst, even a beginner in geopolitics can understand that Lavrov was wearing his sweatshirt not in a meeting, but as he was going to the hotel. In other words, it was casual attire. He was not in an official meeting. He wasn't wearing the CCCP sweatshirt in his capacity as foreign minister, meeting with the United States as part of the delegation. No, Ben, you're wrong. He was wearing it as casual wear. It would be like me entering the hotel in Alaska wearing a Durant shirt. I've traveled to the United States. I wore this very comfortable sweatshirt. Yes, am I trolling? Sure, I'm trolling a bit. I'm having fun. But when he was at the meeting with the United States, Lavrov wore a suit and a tie, and a very nice suit. And a very nice necktie, where Zelensky, he wore the green getup in an official meeting with the President of the United States at the White House. That was an official freaking meeting, Ben Shapiro, right? That wasn't Zelensky traveling from the airport to his hotel, in which case he could wear whatever he wants, right? Knock yourself out, Zelensky. Wear whatever is comfortable for you. But when you go to the White House to meet the President of the United States, bro, you gotta wear a suit and tie, man. So anyway, that's the clown world. That's the video. They're Duran.locals.com. We are on Rumble and Odyssey and Telegram and X. And go to the Duran shop. Pick up some merch. There is a link in the description box down below. And I will see everybody tomorrow. Take care.